The Life Simplified ladies are doing a short survey to improve the podcast, and we'd love to hear your feedback. For a chance to win some UK swag, complete our survey linked in our show notes. Thanks. Welcome to the Life Simplified podcast. If you have joined us over the last several weeks, I think beginning in November, we've done what we're calling Take Back Tuesdays. And so we're just pulling out some of our favorite topics and episodes over the past year and just giving everybody a refresh. We're going to continue with that this month for December, but we're going to put a little spin on it. We each have kind of picked our favorite episodes over the last year, and we're going to revisit those. We're going to let you re-listen, but we're also going to discuss a little bit about our own progress since we had that episode. So for me, I decided that one of my very favorite episodes of the year is all the way back to the bonus episode in January called Life Balance. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity to get with the ladies and discuss where we're at with our life balance. And we're all kind of looking at each other with grins and a little bit of like, you really going to make me talk about this? We know this is a tough topic, but that's why I wanted to bring it back, because it's something we'll be constantly working on. So I'm not going to go over all the things because you're going to get to listen to the full episode after this brief discussion. But I do want to remind us that we discussed 5 keys to life balance. And so those were set priorities, say no, stop wasting time, plan ahead, and reflect, which we're currently doing right now. So step 5, we're good. We're reflecting. But my question for you ladies, and honesty and no judgment, okay? Because I know life is life, and sometimes it's a roller coaster. But what things have you implemented or, and I stress or, let go of to even the scale, to even your life balance scale?
Well, you stressed honesty, and we have talked a lot about seasons in previous podcasts. And right now, I'm in a season of life balance is really out of whack. When we first did this episode, I felt like I was really doing a good job about setting those priorities and planning ahead. And then life happened over the last couple of months, and I've kind of fallen out of that. So right now I'm in a hard season of trying to keep that balance. But what I'm hoping that I see the end of this season coming, and what I am trying to do is to plan ahead and think about the new year and what I want my schedule at work to look like, and really be intentional. That is our buzzword for the year.
Yes,
that's our word of the year. I'm going to be intentional about how I plan programs at the office, and then also being very intentional about how I spend time at home. And that is going to mean that I'm going to have to say no to some things. And one thing I really struggle with is perfectionism. And so I'm really trying to let go of that. That has been a struggle all year long. I'm not great at it, but that's what I'm trying to let go of.
I think it's important, and I want everyone who's listening to know your scale is never going to be completely even. Like, life is full of ebbs and flows. And so the idea is we get as close to even as we can, but knowing there are going to be, like you said, seasons. There are going to be seasons where we're a little more focused at work, or we have to spend a little more time and attention and intentionality with our families. And that's okay. I think that's normal. So the goal isn't that we're going to find perfection. And so I love you're going to let go of that. Let it go. Let it go. I'm not going to go into Frozen for y'all. I'll spare you.
I think we should.
Well,
let's
I think
go Frozen.
No one will want to listen to this ever again if I sing Frozen to them. But that is so true. Like, saying no and reminding yourself that you're in different seasons, and it's going to be a give and take. And so don't feel like you're not there if you're not perfectly even, because I don't think that exists.
And I think it also helps to have a friend group that can remind you of those things. And the ladies in this room remind me of these things often. You're not going to be perfect. Everything is still going to continue on.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so I guess it's my turn. So I've got one that I've done fairly well and one that I'm still working on.
Okay.
So mine that I've done fairly well and really improved on is leaving work at work.
Yes. I love it.
That is even really talking about work at home. That's what, because it's so easy to be like, well, hey, how's your day? How was your day? And then go into what happened or what didn't. And then you go down that rabbit hole. So I've really been intentional. Just be like, my day was great, and kind of get a brief and then be done with it.
That's a great reminder. I'm terrible at that. And
Yes.
so maybe that's going to be on my to-do list, is like limit the work talk. Because I know my husband doesn't want to hear about it all the time. You know, and sometimes they get dumped on. Like they get the stressors and the overwhelmed and the whatever. And then it's hard to have a legit conversation. So I'm glad that you pointed that out.
And if you're not in it, they don't always understand it. So that's a really good tip. I like that a lot. I'm going to steal that.
So like I said, I'm not perfect at it, but I have been working on it. And then the leaving work at work, one thing you all know over the past year, I've talked about how I have a young son. And if you have had a kid before, you know, they're like little petri dishes when they're young and they're sick all the time. So I've really been trying to be like, he's sick, he needs me, and I'm not worrying about work. I'm not checking my email, and just being present when I need to be present instead of worrying about what I'm not getting done. And that's been a very hard thing for me to do, but I'm getting there, of course.
That's really hard.
It is so hard.
Because you feel so pulled in different directions. And I don't have a young child. Mine is quite a bit older. But just generally speaking, when a family member needs you, it's hard to be both places and try to do both things, and then you're feeling like you're not doing either one well. So I completely get that.
It's like you have not necessarily mom guilt, but a guilt. You know, if you're not, you're trying to be between the two, or you're like, you feel like you're not fulfilling what you need to do at work. So it's a really hard struggle, and I think it's going to be ongoing all the time. But I've really tried to be better at that.
Yeah, I think that's something that I relate to a lot. Is there have been times throughout this year that I'm like, I don't know that I am killing it at anything. You know, sometimes you're just like, I don't feel like I'm killing it at work. I don't feel like I'm killing it at home. I'm just like treading water and surviving. But I think we all go through that, and we feel like maybe we're supposed to be doing better. But I think we're just doing the best we can do at the time. And so it sounds like y'all are both like really aware of what's working well and really aware of where to go from here. And I'm looking at these things, trying to think for myself where I'm at. And I think the one thing that I really loved about the original podcast episode is talking about what do you value when setting priorities, because I think we forget that when we're setting priorities, it has to align with what our values are, or we will never feel balance. And I think that's why we all feel out of balance, because instead of setting our priorities around what we value, we set our priorities around what everyone else thinks we should, and I, air quotes the word should, value. And then there's always that dissonance. And so I've tried to be more intentional this year about what do I value, and let me invest my time and my effort in those things so that I can feel more personally balanced. But it's hard. It's a difficult task, because we do have all those voices in our head, whether they're right or wrong. We hear them and we feel like maybe we need to do something different. But I think that's something I want to continue working on, is really striving for my priorities to be dictated by what I value, so that my time feels like it's better spent. And then looking at some of the other things, which I'm not going to go to in depth, you're going to get to hear all this, but I think they're good stuff to reflect on. But the saying no, I feel like I've done a better job of not overcommitting in some aspects of my life. And then I feel like my kids are overcommitting me in other aspects of my life. But I think that too is a season thing with multiple children and multiple activities. Sometimes that's just going to happen. So working on saying no, I feel like I'm relatively good at that. That's something I try to practice on a regular basis, but there are some things that are just unavoidable in that area. But also the stop wasting time stood out to me. And I feel like just in the last few months, particularly at work, I have been really focused on taking the time that I have to check things off the list instead of going down a rabbit hole, which I think can be easy to do sometimes. And so I'm not exactly where I want to be with it, but I feel like I'm much more on task, which makes me feel less overwhelmed at the end of the day. So I want to continue to work on that, this not wasting time, the just finding those times and doing something productive with that time instead of letting myself be sucked into social media or a conversation with someone, a coworker, a family member. I think we are easily distracted, and so working on those things. Anything else either of you want to add before we take our listeners to our OG episode on life balance?
I think it was a good reminder for us to reflect on it. So even if you have listened to this podcast before, it may not hurt to listen to it again, because I'm definitely going to listen to it again, especially like Ashley mentioned, going into the new year. It never hurts to revisit and just kind of rethink where you're at and celebrate those successes. So if you had made small changes, that's awesome. And even if it's little, it's still a success, and just keeping goals to work forward just to be better.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for being really honest and transparent. And for our listeners, I hope you'll stick with us, because coming up right now is the original Life Balance episode.
Sometimes life is messy. Have you ever wished you could refocus your mind, home, relationships, and work life? Join us as we use research-based information to make practical changes and simplify life. This is Life Simplified.
Welcome to our January bonus episode. This month, we have been focusing on resetting our mental health, finances, physical health, and relationships. Throughout the month, we have frequently come back to the idea of balance. So today we have decided to dedicate our time together to taking a deeper dive into the concept of life balance. So as I was preparing for this episode, I wanted to look up an actual definition of balance, because I know what it means to me, but we want to all be on the same playing field. So balance is a harmonious blend of occupational, familial, social, and leisure pursuits. And I think that is perfect to what we've been doing this month as we've thought about resetting all the different areas of our life. It's important as we begin talking about life balance today that you realize that life balance will look drastically different depending on life stage and circumstances. So your life balance is not going to match anyone else's. It's specific to you. Also, it's key that maintaining balance will help to decrease our stress and is the cornerstone of overall personal wellness. So it is pivotal in what we do to reset and make sure that we're balancing all those areas of our life. Today, we're going to focus on 5 keys to life balance, and I'll go through those quickly, and then the ladies and I are going to discuss them and how we're doing on these different keys of life balance. So key 1, set priorities. Key 2, say no. Key 3, stop wasting time. Key 4, plan ahead. Key 5, reflect. All right, ladies, let's go back to the top. Setting priorities. So setting priorities in life balance is important because we will only balance ourselves based on our values, but we have to know what we value in order to know how to set those priorities. So what do you value?
That's a really good question, because you could value several different things, but then you really need to sit down and think about what is your number one thing that you value the most. Mine would probably be my family. You know, family is everything to me. My life basically revolves around my husband and my 3 children and my other, my mom, dad, my sister, brother, and my in-laws, but that would probably be my big thing that I value the most is my family.
I agree. The first thing I thought was relationships. And I thought my relationship with my husband, my relationship with my kids, and my parents and my sibling. And, you can go down and down the list and fall into the rabbit hole, but relationships, I think, would definitely be something that I value. And when you're talking about priorities, I'm sure we'll get to this, but I thought, am I making choices based on what my priorities are?
Yeah, I agree with both of you all. So I think I may add a little bit to it, thinking about value, and something that I can probably improve on too is time, which is mentioned, but the time that you spend with your family and how you spend that time. I think that's something that I've been trying to be more mindful of. So yeah, valuing my family and the time that I spend with them, because we all struggle with probably time management, but in the world we live in, we tend to stay busier than we, used to. So thinking about it that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with all of you. I think definitely when you think about what do you value, for me, my family comes forefront. And so relationships, time, how am I spending that time? What am I doing with that time? And I think you make a good point, Ashley, that you think, okay, my relationships are what I value, but is that where I'm putting my time? Is that where I'm setting that priority? And I think that's important. A lot of times we value one thing, but we set our priorities based on what the world says we should value and how we should react. And so I think that's why we think, well, it's so easy. Like, we know what we value, but do we really? And do we honor those values when we are setting our priorities? And so I think sitting down and saying, okay, what is my top priority and how can I give those things the proper amount of time, knowing that there are other things as well. So we all said relationships in our families, but also I think our work is something that we value. I think probably our spiritual health is something that we value. I think our relationships with others, our hobbies, our interests, all of those things are things we value. It's figuring out where do they fit on that continuum so that I'm giving it the priority that it needs to have. What goes on top? What orders does it go in? And how do I address all of those things? And that all goes back to this idea of balance. But until we can sit down and really be gut level honest on what I value, we're never going to be able to set our priorities that are going to make us feel balanced and make us feel good. We're constantly going to feel like we're lacking.
I also like how you made the point a while ago that every one of us is in a different, far as balancing their life. I am completely different from all of you ladies other than work, when it comes to my relationships with my family and that, and I think we need to, wanted to let our listeners know, just because we're in a certain stage doesn't mean that they should be in that stage too. So I like how you brought that up a while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That your life stage is going to set your priorities. It's going to, you're going to have different values depending on where you are in life and what you're doing. And that's okay. There's not a right or wrong here. And it's not a right or wrong with what you value. This is your personal life. And so you have to figure that out for you. And that there's no guilt, no shame. It's just figuring out what that means to you. So then that second key, I think, is equally difficult for us. And that's that saying no. A lot of times we find that we overcommit and we're not good at relying on others for help with tasks. And so there's not necessarily like a deep question here, but I would say, do you struggle saying no? Do you find it hard to say no?
I think we're all looking around this table and saying, that is us. That is definitely something that I will speak for myself, that definitely something that I struggle with. I want to be able to say yes. And if I have to say no, then I really feel like I need to have this just tremendously huge reason why that I'm saying no.
Yeah, I think I see that. Like, we feel the pressure to say yes, or the pressure to have the right answer to say, like, no, I can't do that. And I've been trying to be better at this. Well, we were at a meeting the other day, and I was like, and I wasn't trying to be, offend anybody. And I was like, no, I just don't have time for it. And I think, I was thinking, like, well, did I offend them? Are they going to be mad? But then it's like, you know what? I'm doing it for me, for my, mental health, and just for my sake of doing the best that I can at the other things that I've committed to as well.
I guess my thing of not wanting to tell anybody no, I don't want to let anybody down. I think that I'm Superwoman, but I'm not, and I can't do all things. But I think my big thing of not wanting to tell anybody no is because I don't want them to be disappointed in me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think we feel guilty when we say no to someone, but saying no is one of the biggest parts of being able to set a healthy boundary for ourselves. And, that idea that we can't pour from an empty cup. So if I constantly take on commitments, I constantly say yes, there's nothing left of me to give. And I'm not giving my best because I can't give my best to all the things. I have to pare that down and focus in and say, okay, what can I commit to that I can do well, as opposed to just saying yes so that I don't hurt someone's feelings. I think we have a hard time with that. And I've found, especially when I've practiced therapy with individuals, that some people just struggle with even saying the word no. Like just the physical aspect of saying no is so uncomfortable that they would rather commit to anything than just have to utter that word. And so I've been known to give assignments to clients where I've encouraged them to have a no day. And they have to say no to everything. Even if it's something they really like or they want to do, it's just that practice and that repetition of saying no. But I also tell them the key is if you have a no day, you don't tell the people around you that, oh, I was told I have to have a no day today. You don't need a disclaimer to say this is why I have to tell you no. But maybe that's something we all need to practice on our own sometimes, is just practicing saying the word no and knowing that that's okay.
Yeah, because I don't know if it's like, I never really thought about it, but like a cultural thing of no is like negative, as like a negative word. And it's really not.
No.
But yeah, I don't know where
Look,
we...
I practiced.
Yeah,
Look at you! Yeah, I don't know where we, or maybe just myself, picked that up, that it's negative, or maybe, like I said, a cultural thing, like, you're not supposed to say no. I don't know.
But you think about it. How many times have we told our children no? So
Right.
that's probably
I
where
know, I
you
was-
get that positive, that negative
Yeah,
from.
I was thinking about like my son who's young and starting to, crawl or swim is what we call it. But, I'm always like, no, don't do that. No. I'm like, oh, we, I guess maybe start at an early age that no, or don't do that, which we can find a better way to do that. And other than saying no, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, and like we said in other episodes, we've discussed that we are modeling behaviors for others, for our children, for our coworkers, for our friends, for our family. And so when we model healthy behavior and being able to set a boundary of saying, no, I can't commit to that at this time, it's not good for me, then we give them the permission to also say no and not overcommit and not get themselves bogged down with things that they don't have the time or energy to fulfill. So I think that's important. And it kind of takes us to the third key, and stop wasting time. And I think we do a lot of wasting time without really realizing it. And so some of the things that we can do to stop wasting time are setting daily goals, focusing in one day at a time, as opposed to these bigger goals, which are still important, but can be overwhelming. And so we pare it down into smaller, bite-sized goals, and then focus on things like taking breaks, leaving work at work. And one suggestion when I was preparing for this was develop a digital divide. And I was like, what is a digital divide? I want to know more. This was not something I'd heard of before. But it's having work apps separate from your personal apps. So like your email, for example, how many of us think I'm going to take a vacation, but then we get roped into checking those emails, and the next thing we know, we've worked a couple hours while we're sitting on the beach, which is lovely. It's great to work on a beach rather than in an office, but are we really allowing ourselves to have that work-life balance if we are working on our time off? And so I guess, how do you all feel about that concept of leaving work at work and developing a digital divide? I don't know. That's something different I hadn't thought of.
I really like that idea. I'll be the one to first tell you, when I was on vacation, I did check my work email. But, I like the idea and the concept that we need to leave it, when we're not at work. I like that, and have it divided from our other personal things on our phone. So, because I have my personal email on my phone and I have my work stuff on my phone. I have both. So I like that idea.
And if it's right in front of you, it is really hard to step back and say, okay, well, I'm not on the clock right this second. I'm not going to check this. It can wait until the morning or whenever you go back to work. And I like that idea. And I don't know a whole lot about all the different kinds of phones, but I do know that I have separate folders that I can move things to, and I could create a work folder for specifically those things that I would use for work, and that might be helpful.
Yeah, I think so too. And for me, a couple things I've done is to turn off notifications to email, and I've even done like social media, like so I don't waste time and like, oh, I have a notification, I need to check it. Like, so all of my apps, I turned off all notifications, and so I feel like that's worked with email. And then also I just found out about it. It's probably, nothing new, but you can set times when people can send you emails. So I didn't know if you could do that. Like, it's on and off. So like between 7 and 7, my emails will come through, but it's got like a little snooze button, and it does it on the weekend too. And it shows on my email. I didn't know that was a thing. And I think it is challenging too. You talked about dividing them. My husband has 2 separate phones. He has a work phone and he has a personal phone, but it still doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so, I think that we can do these things, but actually making ourselves or being more mindful, as we've talked about, is important too.
I want to know how we can do leave work at work.
Right?
Can somebody teach us that?
Exactly. Because I'll catch myself a lot of times, especially if I'm behind on something at nighttime. I've got my laptop in my lap and I'm doing whatever for work. So sometimes I don't know how to turn off that switch. Okay, it is home time. It's family time, instead of sitting there on my computer working. So I need some tips on how to do that.
Yeah, and I think we all do that from time to time. And I think everything in moderation, I think there are times when that's necessary and that's helpful. But I think also we're not our best selves if we are working around the clock and never taking those brain breaks that we need to kind of recharge and refresh and then get back there with new ideas and new eyes for what we're doing. One thing that may be helpful, Joni, I don't know, like for me, sometimes I'm like, I will not bring my laptop home today. Like, tonight is going to be a no laptop night. And if I don't have it at my house, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me when I want to pull it out and start working on something. And I think we just have to do that. Or it's leave it in the car where it's I'm going to have to make the effort to go outside and get it. Just making it a little more or a little less accessible, I guess, is
I was
what I
going
would
to say
say.
Convenience kind of popped into my mind because, we have phones that are here, they're there, they're in our face all the time, they're in our hands, so it's more convenient to do it. And I think it's a cultural thing, probably. So one thing I've been doing is trying to just put my phone down somewhere, and sometimes it's just I lose it, so it's not intentional. I guess
do it all the time.
I act like it is, but just being intentional about I'm just laying it down, and I'm not trying to check my email or capture moments on a camera. I'm just trying to enjoy it. And sometimes my husband will be like, "Well, I tried to call you." I'm like, I don't know where my phone's at, which, like I said, sometimes it's true, but it's, or sometimes people will call and even if it's my mom, and if I'm doing something, I'm like, I won't answer it. And Kirsten's like, your mom's calling. I'm like, you know what? I'm in the moment. I can call her back. If she calls back continuously, of course, in case something's wrong, but it's I can take the time. I can call her back in 10 minutes when I'm finished doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. And I think you definitely have to be intentional in unplugging.
Yeah. It's so hard though.
Because all the things, even sometimes I will leave my cell phone like that purposely in another area of the house where I won't necessarily hear it or see it. But then, and I just got a text message right now and it pops up on my watch. And so it's even though I've left the phone somewhere else, we have all of this technology that connects us to people, which is lovely. And I'm so thankful for it. It's such a great tool, but also at the same time, it can make it that much harder for us to disconnect and take a break. And so I think we do have to be that key word again, intentional. And yes, we want to be able to let someone contact us if they need us. We want to let people know that I'm here for you. But sometimes we need that time with none of the distractions. And even if it's an hour a night where I'm going to take the watch off, I'm going to put the phone away, I'm going to not pull out the laptop, whatever it is, I think we have to figure out what does that look like for me, and how will that make such a big impact that I will then be more productive when I go back into that area of my life. I think leaving work at work is a mystery and something that we can always strive to do better. And again, like with everything we've done here, it's progress, not perfection. And so I'm not going to be perfect at this, but if I can do better, then that's key. Which takes us to our next key. Key 4, plan ahead. And under this, we're thinking about planning ahead on those things that we've already discussed a lot this month. Planning ahead on self-care. So scheduling your self-care, meal planning so that you know that you're getting nutritious meals for you and your family, scheduling family and social time so you can build those relationships and foster those relationships. And so again, planning ahead is all about being intentional. I'm not going to accidentally take care of myself. I'm not going to accidentally nourish myself in the best way that I know how. I'm not going to accidentally grow family relationships and friend relationships and foster those social interactions. I have to schedule those things. We are too busy as a society to think that we're going to fall into those things without putting it on the calendar, without saying, this is a priority. So that goes back to number 1. If I value relationships, then that needs to be a priority. I have to schedule that time to show that is my priority. And so we're not always great at that planning ahead and that scheduling those things. So I know we've kind of hit on these areas throughout the month, and we've discussed a lot of this, but what areas do you feel like you're doing really well at planning ahead for, and which areas are you still kind of like, let me figure out how to get this in my calendar?
Mine goes back and forth. Some months I feel like or some weeks, let's go week by week. Some weeks I'm on it with the meal planning. I know what we're going to have. I've got the grocery shopping done, and that is just a weight off of my shoulders. And then some weeks, that's not the case. As far as self-care goes, and then even scheduling family and social time, sometimes I feel like my family does not always get the best of me. I want them to get the best of me, but do I schedule that time so that I've got my self-care in so that they can have the best of me?
Yeah, it will ebb and flow. I mean, from week to week, like you said, because there are weeks that my kids might have 3 ball games, 15 practices, and we're in 6 different cities over that week. And then I don't do a real good job with meal planning because we're not home. And I don't have a lot of self-care because by the time we get home, it's get in bed, get ready for school the next day, and just survive. But then there are those other times when you're like, oh, I feel like I'm thriving, y'all. I've got this. It's working. And so you're right. It's going to be an up and down. But definitely something, once we have awareness, we can say, okay, I know there's a tough week coming up. Where can we sneak in those things? Where can we sneak in a nutritious meal? Where can we sneak in self-care? Where can I sneak in some quiet downtime for the family?
I guess for myself, I used to do a really good job on meal planning. I mean, I would meal plan for the whole month. I may not go shopping for the whole month, but I would have it, look at my calendar, this is what's going on. I do to some degree, but not like I should. Scheduling self-care, I go and have my nails done, about once a month. And so I do consider that self-care for myself because I go and I just relax, that little time that I'm there. So, and I didn't used to do that. And I guess that's because I am also in a different stage than you all because my children are older and I don't have to rush home immediately to go get them from the babysitter, the school or whatever. So, but for years I did not do that. Scheduling family time, Sunday at lunch, my kids, my husband, we're all there. I cook lunch for all of us. And I do this every week. And so my family knows Sunday is our time together. Even it's for just an hour or two to eat and just say, hey, how's things going this week? We do schedule that every week. And then I started going to my mom and dad's every Monday night. And my mom cooks for me and either my daughter or one of my sons or both of them. So I know every Monday night I try not to schedule anything for work because that's my time with my parents. And so I know I slack on other family is probably socials or anything like that. But them are the 2 main things though that I do schedule every week. and I make it a priority to make sure. Now, let me just tell you, though, sometimes the week before that Sunday, Saturday night, like, what am I cooking? So, I'm not saying all of this to say that I'm perfect, because it's like, oh my, what am I cooking? Okay, I got to do one more pickup first thing Sunday morning, before church or after, but, So, I try to balance as much as I can, but sometimes I don't. So, but I really try to schedule, plan, make time. But it's hard. It is so hard to balance things. And I think I've said that multiple times on our podcast here.
So for me, I guess for work, like, it's easy to plan because we have our calendars and all that. And then I've kind of tried to carry that on at home. We have a magnetized calendar on our refrigerator. And so we'll write what the plan is, or, if there's a doctor's appointment, or if we have a night meeting, or, kind of whatever that important event is for it's a whole month, but it's week by week also. And so that's really helped us to look at the calendar and just be like, wow, like, we're super busy. What are we going to do, or how are we going to do it? So we're working on it. And then also, like, just planning. I'm still in the progress working on it stage. Cause we're just trying to adjust to our new normal. And then, like you said, you think you have it figured out, and then our son's sick, and then you're like, you know what? This is a disaster. So,
we've all been there.
Yeah. Like, we go back to, it's what phase you're in, and it's okay if you're like me and you don't have it together, but you're just trying to figure it out, and but being mindful of it and intentional. I'll get better at it. It's just, it'll take time.
Life happens.
Yeah,
is what
it does.
happens.
It does. And that's okay. You just roll with it.
Absolutely.
And you find out what works, and then what doesn't work, and then how you need to adjust what was working but is no longer working.
Yeah, of course.
And, it's a constant. This is like everything we've discussed. It's not a one and done. Like, oh, I found the answer, the key, we're good. Life changes quickly, and we have to realize, like, sometimes we have to pivot. Sometimes that worked, but maybe it's not now, and so I have to try something different. And I know, like, that for us, when I think about my family and myself, my self-care recently has been a lot of reading, and that's been great for me. It was something I enjoyed that I forgot I enjoyed because I'd gotten so tied up in other things, and that wasn't a priority. It wasn't something I valued for a while, and now it's coming back around as something that's valuable to me, and so it's more of a priority in my life. So that's been good for me. And then also combining, like I've discussed before, sometimes combining that self-care with family and social. So the cup of coffee with my husband in the morning, to me that's self-care, but it's also family time. It's that one-on-one time with him. And so that kind of can sort of get two things done with one event. And that's nice when you can do that and kind of get double dip. Meal planning has not always been great for me because cooking is not a love of mine, and it used to be something I dreaded. Like, oh my goodness, don't make me plan a meal, don't make me cook a meal, don't make me do this. I don't like it. But I have found a routine that works for me and my family over the last 6 months or so, and so I've gotten much better at it, and that has alleviated a lot of stress in my life, because that was something that was a constant struggle for me. And so it's not 100%, and there are some weeks that it doesn't look good, but it's gotten a lot better, and so that does help with balance. But just getting those things in there, and I will say, as far as family and social time, I think I was just sharing with Ashley yesterday, actually, that it's been a really busy season at our house, and one thing my husband and I have tried to do is intentionally schedule a date night once a week. And so that was working really well for a while, but then life happens. And so I all of a sudden realized the other day, like, oh, we really haven't had a date night in a while. And I'm starting to feel that, like, you can kind of feel like you're getting agitated, like, what's going on? That's what's missing. Like, we haven't had that quality one-on-one time. And so I told Ashley, I was kind of sneaky, and I looked over at my husband and I was like, do you think we could go maybe out to dinner, just the two of us, this coming weekend? He was like, that'd be great, but we're so busy. Is there time? And I was like, yeah, Saturday's looking all right. It's a lot more chill than what we've seen in the last couple months. And he was like, okay. I said, oh, you want to go to dinner? And He was like, well, that'd be good. And I was like, okay, good, because I already made reservations. And so earlier the day, I was like, we need a date night. And I was like, I'm making reservations now, and I'll get him on board along the way. But I think sometimes we just have to do that. We just have to jump in and say, you know what? We've got to make room in our schedule for this because this is important.
Yeah, so I'm laughing because I just did that with my husband. We haven't taken the time for a while. And so what I did is I just, I sent a message to his secretary, and I was like, what does he have on this day for 2 or 3 hours? And she's like, nothing. I said, make something up, write it in. And I took off half a day, and I made her make a meeting up, and she put it in his calendar. And so I'm just going to surprise him and be like, hey, it's our day. We're going. And so even, it's not on the weekend, but I'm trying to fit it in.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that.
Yes,
absolutely
awesome.
Love that. Yeah, we have to make it happen, right?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, like I said, it's not going to accidentally fall on our calendar.
Right.
So, I mean, it might have for him, but
it is for him. I was going to say, it is for him because I'm not giving him the choice. He thinks he has this important meeting. I'm like, it's just me. But yeah.
That is
an important meeting.
That's true.
Important.
Absolutely, 100%. And so I think, for those of you listening to this, we don't have it figured out, but trial and error. I mean, just keep going, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't, and it's going to look different for all of us. And so our fifth key to life balance is reflecting, like we're doing this month. We're resetting, we're reflecting, we're taking a look at what have we been doing that's great and we want to hold on to, and what have we been doing that is dragging us down and it's just causing clutter in our life, and we want to clean that out. We want to get focused again. And so our reflection questions are, how is my balance? Let me be honest. What does balance look like to me? Am I tipping the scales to one side or the other far more than I should be? What is weighing me down? What are the things that are holding me back that I could let go of, that maybe I've put an emphasis on, but they're not the most valuable and they're not the most important, and I could let them go and clean them out? And am I honoring my values? Some of us noticed as we were discussing that I value one thing, but I've made something else my priority. And that's going to make me feel off balance every single time. If my values and my priorities are out of whack, I will not be in balance in my life. And so for those of us in this room, thinking about those three questions, how is my balance? What is weighing me down? Am I honoring my values? You don't have to answer any specific question there. You can pick one if you want to, or all of them. But what thoughts, what's going through your mind as we think about these three questions?
My first thought was, no, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
not doing
I know.
these
I'm
things.
like,
I'm not.
No, that's
So,
yeah, it's not happening.
My goal has been balance for, I don't know, probably the last 6 months to a year. I'm like, I've got to figure out how to balance. I've got to balance. I've got to figure this out. And it's still a struggle. I would not say that I have things balanced, and we have talked about that it's going to ebb and flow, and some days feel really good, and some days I'm just like, yeah, no, this is not. But this really made me think, okay, so if I'm saying this is what I value, then how can I make those changes? And just the other day, I felt a little grumpy. I mean, does anybody ever feel grumpy?
No, never.
I mean, just me. I'm the only grumpy one. I'm the only grumpy one in the room. But I was feeling a little grumpy, and I just stopped and I was like, I think I need some self-care. My husband looked at me and he was like, okay. And I was like, I'm going to go sit in here. And so I just went in the other room and read for a few minutes, and it was better. And I recognized that. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is one key to me finding that balance, is being able to recognize what I'm missing. If it's the date night, if it's that I haven't taken any time for myself, or whatever is causing me to be off balance, being able to recognize that.
Yeah. Awareness. Huge. Huge.
Yeah. I guess mine would be, what is weighing me down? I was sitting here thinking, what weighs me down? And I come to the conclusion, I weigh myself down, because I feel like, once again, I'm Superwoman and I can do absolutely everything. And I'm not going to say no. So I need to work on being able to not weigh my own personal self down, that I balance my work, my family and everything, and learning how to say no, and the goals that, we've talked about, the keys to them, making small changes That, I mean, it's not going to change overnight, but making small changes in the way that I do schedule things or prepare for things. So plan ahead. I think that's my key thing is making sure that I'm not weighing myself down.
For me, the one that stuck out was, am I honoring my values? Because we talked about family and all that. And then it's like, am I doing that? Like, you think you are, but in reality, are you? So for me, that's kind of what stuck out to me. And also I was thinking about all these questions and thinking maybe I should write these down and set a plan a time once a month or every 2 weeks and reevaluate this.
Yeah.
Because, we've talked about it changes, life happens, but just taking, whether it's 20 minutes or 5 minutes, whatever you have, mindfully putting it in your calendar and just writing those questions out and just thinking about it. Am I doing okay with this? Am I not? What can I do, or what's a small thing I can do in the next couple weeks to improve that? So that's kind of what stuck in my mind thinking about that.
Yeah, I love that. Like constant reflection, checking in with yourself, like what's working well, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. How am I being bogged down? When I looked at those 3 questions, I think for the current me, I was looking at what is weighing me down, kind of like Joni, like what is weighing me down? Because I do feel like there's a weight on me right now. And I think it goes back to that saying no and not overcommitting. And we're so good at overcommitting. And if it's not at work, it's at home, it's with kids, it's with friends, it's with family. And so taking a step back and saying, I can't do all the things. And one thing we didn't really dig in enough on earlier, so I kind of want to mention it here, is that relying on others, asking for help at work and at home. And that's one thing I've tried to do because it's important. For me, I want to be like, oh, but I have a certain way I want to do it. And I need to have my hands in it. But I've found I can't do that. And then I do feel weighed down when I try to do that. And so in my personal life, I've tried really hard to ask for help and to, my husband is great about helping. Like I'm very blessed in that area that my husband he's a big helper and he does share the weight. But we both kind of get bogged down sometimes with 3 kids and lots of activities and lots of commitments. And so we've really been pulling in our parents and asking them if they can help with a pickup or a drop off or a game, and we can't be everywhere all the time. And I think we put that pressure on ourselves to do that. And I know that I put I put pressure on myself to do that, but then we are weighed down. And then I find myself at my kids' event and I'm resentful and I'm tired and I'm frustrated and I'm not present for them. So what is the point in me being there if I can't fully be there for them? And so by taking a step back and letting someone else help and relying on others for some things, I can give them my best self. And so I think for me, when I reflect, that's super important in my balance at the moment. But again, looking at that over and over again, because it's going to change. 2 weeks from now, it could be something totally different that I need to kind of revamp and refocus. Any other thoughts, ladies, before we wrap this up?
I think I have a lot to think about, reflect on.
I'm going to get my journal.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you all for joining us for this bonus episode. I want you to ask yourself those 3 reflection questions at home. How is your balance? What is weighing you down? And are you honoring your values? And as always, I encourage you to write it down in a journal, share it with a friend, and commit to adjusting just one activity to help you restore your life balance over the next week. Thank you for joining us. This is Life Simplified.
Thanks for listening to Life Simplified. We are family and consumer sciences agents with the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. Contact us at lifesimplifiedpodcast@gmail.com.